At 4:42 a.m., the USS Truman sailed through the world's most vital shipping artery, a floating fortress at the heart of America's power. Suddenly, alarms shattered the silence. 15 ballistic missiles and over 20 drones, launched from Yemen, targeted the carrier, testing advanced defenses against a threat no admiral expected to face. Some intercepts came within seconds of disaster. Within minutes, the world saw America's answer, a wave of precision strikes that changed the region overnight. But what brought the Truman into the crosshairs? And how close did the world come to chaos on the morning when the USS Truman took a direct hit? The stakes begin here. 12% of all global trade flows through a corridor only 20 miles wide. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, where the Red Sea narrows between Yemen and Djibouti, is more than a line on the map. It is the world's bottleneck. Every day, tankers loaded with oil, container ships stacked high with electronics, grain, and medicine, and bulk carriers carrying raw materials pass through these waters. In 2024, that traffic carried nearly $1 trillion worth of goods, bound for ports in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. But when the first missiles arced over the horizon, the world's supply lines suddenly looked fragile. The numbers reveal the scale of exposure. Nearly 90% of container shipping companies rerouted their vessels around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. After Houthi attacks spiked, that detour adds more than 3,500 nautical miles. 2 weeks of travel, millions in fuel costs, and untold ripple effects on global supply chains. Freight prices from Shanghai to Rotterdam soared by 256% in just 8 weeks. By February 2025, only 200 cargo ships transited the Red Sea each month, down from over 2,000 before the crisis began. The Truman's presence was not just about military power. It was about keeping the arteries of commerce open. For every hour, the carrier's radar swept the horizon. Billions in global trade kept moving. But the threat was not abstract. The region's instability rippled outward. Food prices spiked in Africa, manufacturing schedules in Europe slipped, and energy markets from Singapore to Houston braced for shocks. Insurance premiums for Red Sea transits skyrocketed, and some shipping lines warned that a single successful strike could close the corridor entirely. The world's economy balanced on a razor's edge. The Truman, with its strike group fanned out across the choke point, became a shield, not just for American interests, but for anyone who depended on the free flow of goods, from diesel in Berlin to rice in Lagos. The ship's mission was clear: deter attacks, reassure allies, and keep the world's most vital shipping lane open. In these waters, the difference between routine and crisis was measured in seconds, and the consequences of failure would be felt across continents. The economic stakes were not just numbers. They were the pulse of a connected world, beating through a single, narrow strait. In the darkness, beyond the Truman's running lights, the enemy waited. Across the hills of Yemen, launch crews watched their screens as coordinates were fed, relays checked, and encrypted orders flashed green. The weapon of choice, Birkin-2H, a medium-range ballistic missile with a reach of 650 miles. Each one, a steel-bodied message built for the express purpose of breaking through layered defenses. The launchers themselves, mobile and camouflaged, moved under tarps and palm fronds, their operators trained by men who spoke Farsi as well as Arabic. Advisors from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But the arsenal did not end with rockets. The Samad-3 drone, long and narrow with its distinctive V-tail, could loiter for hours, crossing 1,500 kilometers of open water on a single tank of fuel. These drones flew low, hugging the sea, almost invisible to radar, their engines muffled to a whisper. Some carried warheads. Others carried cameras, relaying live images of ships in the strait, feeding targeting data back to command posts deep inland. The Samad-3 was not a single-use threat. It was a persistent hunter, able to circle and wait for its moment. From the Bab el-Mandeb to the outskirts of Sana'a, the network was dense. Smugglers ran missile components through Eritrean ports. Technicians in Sana'a's suburbs assembled guidance packages and warheads under the watchful eyes of IRGC trainers. In the months leading up to the crisis, United Nations investigators traced the serial numbers on recovered missile fragments, each weld, each circuit board, a signature of Iranian design. The supply lines never ran dry for long. The strategy was simple: overwhelm, confuse, and strike. Missiles would arc high, their trajectories plotted to arrive in waves. Drones would swamp the horizon, some jamming radars, others seeking out the gaps. The Houthis had learned from every failed shot. They adapted, shifting launch times, mixing cruise missiles with ballistic, using decoys and electronic interference. Every launch was a rehearsal for the next, each failure a lesson for the future. For the Truman, the threat was not theoretical. The carrier's silhouette, lit by the faint glow of the deck operations, was a target painted on every Houthi command center wall. The ship's very presence in the strait was a challenge, a provocation. In the war rooms of Sana'a, commanders watched satellite feeds and awaited the order, knowing that a single missile breaking through could halt the flow of commerce for a generation. In these waters, the enemy's reach was not measured in miles, but in moments. At 4:42 a.m., the outer shield came alive. USS Gravely and USS Mason, both riding the edge of Truman's protective arc, caught the first signatures, 15 ballistic missiles streaking in high from the Yemeni coast. Some dove from the upper atmosphere, others arced low, their trajectories crossing in a pattern meant to overwhelm. The Aegis combat system, decades in the making and never before tested at this scale, began its work. SPY-1 radars painted the sky with invisible beams, tracking each warhead against a backdrop of electronic static and sea clutter. No hesitation. SM-6 interceptors launched in pairs, their boosters flaring white against the black water. Each missile carried its own seeker, hunting through jamming and decoys, guided by the networked logic of Aegis. In the first 30 seconds, 6 intercepts registered, mid-course kills confirmed by digital echoes, and the sudden disappearance of hostile tracks. SM-2s followed, firing in staggered sequence to catch what the first volley missed. The air above the destroyers twisted with contrails, angry scars marking the collision of American engineering and Iranian hardware. Missile after missile vanished from the plot. The system's logic prioritized speed and angle, assigning each threat to the nearest available tube. Crewmen in the Combat Information Center watched as threat rings contracted, then winked out, Lieutenant Commander Brian Hawkins, manning radar operations, later described this moment as a blur of commands and confirmations. No time for doubt, just the rhythm of lock, launch, impact. The first successful intercepts of SM-6 in combat became more than a footnote. They were the difference between routine and catastrophe. Drones, too, came in waves, but the outer shield held. Ballistic warheads broke apart miles above the sea, their fragments burning out before reaching the carrier's formation. The Aegis system, designed for a world of Cold War standoffs, now proved itself in the chaos of real attack. 15 inbound, 15 neutralized, the first line unbroken. For the sailors below deck, it was a victory measured in silence. No alarms for damage control, no fire on the horizon, just the steady pulse of radar and the knowledge that the shield had held. The last drone came in low, hidden by the shimmer of the sea. Less than 400 yards from Truman's hull, it slipped beneath the gaze of every missile, every radar sweep, every practiced hand on a launch trigger. For the men and women manning the Phalanx Close-In Weapons System, CIWS, this was the moment every drill had promised, but none had delivered until now. The CIWS, a squat white dome bristling with sensors and a 6-barreled 20mm Gatling gun, spun to life. Its own radar locked onto the threat, ignoring the chaos of jamming and chaff. In that instant, there was no time for debate. The computer tracked, calculated, and fired. 4,500 rounds per minute, a streak of tungsten shells arcing out to meet the drone head-on. The air split with the sound of gunfire, a mechanical roar that drowned out even the alarms. The drone disintegrated mid-flight. Fragments splashed into the water, some so close that the spray reached Truman's hull. The engagement lasted less than 2 seconds. For the crew in the CIWS control booth, it was both everything and nothing. Years of training condensed into a single automatic reflex. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb, hands still hovering over the manual override, later said he never saw the drone, only the green light that meant the system had done its job. On the bridge, silence replaced the tension. No one cheered. The threat had come closer than anyone wanted to admit. The ESM and our AM systems had done their work at distance. But this time, the last defense was all that stood between the carrier and impact. The kill was confirmed at 395 yards, barely 4 football fields from disaster. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a heavy quiet. Below decks, sailors checked for damage that never came. Above, the radar screens cleared. The attack was over. The first combat kill for the Phalanx on Truman's watch was not a victory to savor, but a margin to remember. In those final yards, survival was measured in milliseconds, and the unwavering trust between sailor and machine. Orders traveled down the chain in less than 60 seconds. Captain Christopher Hill stood at the center of the bridge, voice even, eyes fixed on the digital map as coordinates for retaliation blinked into existence. The Truman's Combat Direction Center became a nerve cluster. Satellite feeds, encrypted chat, and targeting data converging on a single outcome. Tomahawk land attack missiles, or TLAMS, were the weapon of choice. Each missile, nearly 20 feet long and weighing over 3,000 pounds, could fly more than 1,000 miles, hugging the terrain, invisible to most radars. The targeting cycle was relentless. Intelligence analysts confirmed launch locations, Electronic warfare officers mapped out jamming zones, and strike planners plotted flight paths to avoid civilian airspace. Within moments, the destroyers in Truman's escort formation received their fire orders, precise latitude and longitude, down to the 10th of a second. The launch authorization code was read back, checked, and confirmed. Missile hatches slid open. In the span of a breath, the first Tomahawks leapt skyward, boosters igniting with a muted roar. Each warhead carried a message. No sanctuary for those who threaten the world's arteries. On-board, computers adjusted course in real time, updating targets as new intelligence streamed in. The data flow was constant. Satellites overhead, drones relaying video, growlers mapping electronic signatures. Captain Hill's command was measured, deliberate. He stood amid the whir of machinery and the low murmur of status reports, knowing that every launch meant a ripple across continents. The strike was not a blind reaction. Each target, missile site, drone hangar, command relay, was selected for its role in the attack. The goal was not just to silence the launches, but to shatter the network that allowed such an assault to happen. In under 5 minutes, the first wave of Tomahawks crossed the Yemeni coast. The retaliation was underway. Planned, precise, and unmistakable. At 4:51 a.m., the first headline flashed across international newswires: USS Truman engaged in combat, Red Sea. Within minutes, the world's screens lit up with speculation and satellite overlays, each network racing to interpret the scale of the crisis. But the official story moved faster than rumor. Captain Christopher Hill's communications team drilled for moments just like this, activated their rapid response protocol. Secure video feeds streamed from the ship's flight deck, showing undamaged operations and calm voices over the intercom. The message was unambiguous. The Truman was still on station, still in command. On social media, a different battle unfolded. Houthi channels pushed images of missile launches and claims of victory, while pro-Iranian outlets recycled old footage and digital forgeries. Within the hour, US Navy accounts countered with time-stamped footage. Sailors at their posts, flight operations underway, the carrier's running lights cutting through the pre-dawn haze. Hill's team posted a short video. A cook prepping cinnamon rolls in the galley, a baseball score called out in the background. The time visible on a wall clock. The subtext was clear. No panic, no damage, no retreat. Newsrooms from London to Tokyo scrambled for confirmation. Analysts traced the strike's origin to coordinates outside Al Hudaydah, cross-referencing launch signatures with known Iranian-supplied missile types. Financial markets shuddered. Oil prices spiked, and insurance firms froze new Red Sea policies. Yet the Truman's digital footprint, updated in real time, became the anchor for global reporting. Every official post, every live feed reinforced a single point. American naval power was not just surviving, but controlling the narrative. By sunrise, the story had shifted. The attack was no longer just a regional flashpoint. It was a warning, sent and answered in full view of the world. For every hostile claim, there was a counter-image, a data point, a voice from the carrier's deck. The message was unmistakable. Deterrence was not a theory, but a fact, broadcast in real time, and backed by the ship's unbroken silhouette on the world's most contested waters. At 0 4:42 a.m., the USS Harry S. Truman faced a barrage of 15 ballistic missiles and more than 20 attack drones, a scale of assault few warships have encountered in the modern era. The ship's survival owed to layered defenses, the Aegis combat system, SM-6 interceptors, and the Phalanx CIWS, which achieved its first combat kill at under 400 yards. Within minutes, US forces carried out precision strikes using Tomahawk cruise missiles and carrier-based aircraft, sending a response that was reported worldwide before dawn. Yet much remains classified. Details of missile trajectories, the full scope of intelligence used, and the specific damage assessments. What is clear, documented by both satellite imagery and global shipping data, is that the Red Sea's vulnerability persists, and the balance of maritime power relies on constant vigilance. The events surrounding the Truman underscore how readiness and rapid response are now central to naval deterrence in one of the world's most contested waterways.